There we go. Today we're talking about a topic that is very important for everybody, from children to teenagers to adults to the elderly. Sleep is such a cornerstone to health. And I would say in my practice, more than 50% of my patients with chronic health issues also have sleep disturbances, issues with getting restful sleep. So this topic is really important. Get a pen and paper ready. Make sure that if you have any questions, save them for the end. I'll ask for questions. Um, so today we're going to talk about the science of restoring the body and mind with sleep. And it's so important. Now I'm using a different format here today, so bear with me with the slides here. So a little bit about me for those of you who don't know me. I'm a chiropractor of 20, almost 6 years, and I've been practicing functional medicine for over a decade. I love working with kids and moms and families in my chiropractic practice and in my functional medicine practice. I was trained by the Institute for Functional Medicine um, and certified as a functional medicine practitioner, and have done additional training with Dr. Walls, Terry Walls, in reversing and putting autoimmunity and MS symptoms in remission in functional pediatrics. Um, but done a lot of work with Dr. Karazian and in Bredesen Protocol for Cognitive Health. Lots of research to try and pull together to my best to help my patients with their chronic health issues and to help my community to educate you so that you can take better care of yourselves and your families. My goal is really to help inspire people to find the root causes of their chronic health conditions, their chronic sleep issues, their chronic irritable bowel, and reach their health goals. I think my most exciting time in my practice daily is when I see that light bulb go off in a patient's eyes and they go, "Oh my gosh, you mean I have control over so many of my symptoms and so many of my issues that I'm having?" And it's that partnership that I really love. So this presentation today will hopefully give you some information and some tips to help yourself or a loved one or someone that you know impact their sleep in a positive way so they can get the true healing, restorative functions of it. Uh, so many people are struggling with sleepless and restless nights. You're not alone. The CDC reports 1 in 3 adults have trouble sleeping. I would say more than 50% of the patients in my practice that come, like I said, with chronic health conditions have some sort of sleep disturbance. Dr. Matthew Walker, who wrote a great book on sleep, warns that the shorter you sleep, the shorter your lifespan. And that's not to say that if you sleep 10 hours a day, your lifespan will be longer, but we need sleep. So today we're going to explore the causes of poor sleep and how neuroscience and lifestyle science and functional medicine can help you restore balance and reclaim your restful nights. We'll share some tips. And why is it that sleep matters? And, there's so many very busy people, very successful people, moms that don't get a lot of sleep, dads that don't get a lot of sleep, they're up working hard. And many people I've heard say, "Well, I only need 4 or 5 hours of sleep." And if physiologically that's just not the case, there's a very small percentage of the population that needs less sleep. But sleep is so crucial to our body's detoxification, our memory and cognition, our memory consolidation for learning. So it's really, really important. So one of the things is that when we sleep, our body repairs itself. So when we're sleeping, we repair our tissues, we strengthen our immune system function, and we process the stress from our environment that we've experienced in the day or in the week. And it's quality sleep, not the amount of time only, but the quality, which is essential for effective repair. Our brain detoxes at night. We have our own garbage collectors. It's called the lymphatic system that comes to clear brain waste at night. And it's crucial for memory consolidation and cognitive function. So, in our neuroinflammation program, where we help people with brain inflammatory disorders like cognitive decline and Alzheimer's, anxiety, and depression, ADHD, um, we really look at sleep as one of the cornerstones of their protocol and their program. Sleep also regulates key hormones like growth hormone and cortisol, which is our stress hormone, and insulin, and our hunger hormones. So when we have disruptions in sleep, this impacts our metabolic and our endocrine health as well. And there is a direct connection with consistent quality sleep as a predictor for longevity and healthy aging and disease prevention. So that's why it's really, really important. Dr. Dale Bredesen, who wrote a book called The End of Alzheimer's. I was trained by Dr. Dale almost a decade ago in reversing Alzheimer's and helping reverse cognitive decline symptoms. And his work really highlights the role of deep sleep in clearing the plaquing that we see in Alzheimer's patients and in cognitive decline. They're called beta amyloid plaques. And we see that it is really one of the cornerstones of the program and should be of everybody's life. So, one of the practical tips I tell people is if you're not sure if you're getting enough sleep, start a sleep diary and look at it over a month. Don't look it over from day to day. Look at it over a month. And when you wake up in the morning, rate a quality from 1 to 10, 10 being incredibly energetic and you feel super well rested, brain feels clear, ready to take on the world, mood is calm, and 1 being very irritated. Maybe some of you new parents out there who are getting maybe a couple hours of sleep at a time, maybe the quality is 3 or 4 or 2 because you're really being woken up often. I remember those days. And your energy is low. And start identifying the patterns in your sleep. Start identifying, well, I didn't eat a heavy dinner and I slept really well, or I had a glass of wine and I felt fine, but I really had felt like really sleepy in the morning. And I find that when you start to do that over a month, if you're really curious and you really want to understand what works well specifically for you, because we're all individuals, you'll start to see a pattern emerge and you'll be able to give yourself some information that you can use to make better choices for your sleep. Some of the things that we're going to be talking about today, why quick fixes fail, why pills and melatonin fall short, and with a caveat that people will use short-term quick fixes because they need to get sleep, because they're not feeling well. This is not to negate that. This is just why that's not the long-term solution. It may be a short-term solution. What are the hidden disruptors of sleep disturbances like stress and blood sugar and gut health and inflammation, and how do they impact us? Some science-based strategies, root cause solutions, not just getting rid of symptoms, although we'll do a little bit of both, and beyond sleep hygiene, which we'll also discuss more than dark rooms, more than white noise, which many people who have come to me that are working with me and that I speak with about disturbed sleep have already tried those tools. So these 4 questions will be kind of forming our roadmap for tonight, and we'll talk about getting some real tools for lasting change, not just temporary fixes. Okay, why quick fixes fail? Well, this is maybe in any arena in life, cramming something into your brain last minute before you have to present something or before you have to study if you're a student. Usually don't retain too much of that. Losing a bunch of weight quickly doesn't usually stay off. So quick fixes don't fail. And pills and melatonin really sedate. So they induce sleeping, but they don't provide restorative sleep often. And you miss that crucial REM sleep and that deep sleep that you need for repair. So again, short-term fixes are used for short-term, but long-term, you really have to understand how to create a good sleep routine that doesn't take too much time, that works for you. Melatonin is something that patients often ask me about, and I see many people use with their small children who aren't sleeping. Um, just a note to say that if your small child is waking up multiple times in the middle of the night, one of the things that's overlooked and that we won't discuss in this talk, but I'll just mention if that's you, is sleep apnea, as having a tongue tie, as having restricted airways, having a chin retraction. And those kids are waking up because they're having a little bit of sleep apnea. And that doesn't always have to do with inflamed and enlarged adenoids and tonsils. Sometimes that is like a physical airway restriction. So if you're that kid, you have that kid, look into the airway because that's really, really important. Um, giving and melatonin long term can stunt growth. There's some interesting research there. So melatonin will shift your circadian rhythm. It helps you fall asleep, but it doesn't necessarily put you in and help you get into this quality deep sleep as much as it does just help you fall asleep. And oftentimes people who take melatonin will fall asleep, but they wake up again in the middle of the night. So they're able to fall asleep, but not getting deep restorative sleep, which is the goal. Because the root cause is still probably there. So stress, long-term stress for long periods of time that doesn't get resolved, blood sugar imbalances, gut microbiome dysfunction, and gut function dysfunction, and inflammation can all continue to disrupt deep sleep, even when you're taking these supplements. And there's so many out there. Um, And again, they're useful while you're looking for root causes, but really long-term success comes in having every stone overturned and looking at all the solutions. And we're looking at balance over band-aid. So true restoration in sleep requires addressing the underlying biological imbalances for the natural restorative sleep cycles. And it can even start with infants early, having disrupted sleep patterns because of the lighting and the way that they are fed and the way that they are stimulated. So again, Dr. Matthew Walker, who wrote an incredible book called Why We Sleep. If you are having sleep issues or you're just interested in sleep, it's an excellent, excellent resource. You can buy it on Amazon, you can buy it on Indigo. I'm sure you can buy it on lots of different booksellers. And what he says is sleeping pills actually reduce REM and deep sleep phases. So you're less restored despite you've been sleeping in bed. And so again, the goal is restorative sleep because that's where we repair and heal. Some of the hidden disruptors, again, I just want to go over stress hormones. So I don't know too many people with chronic health conditions that don't have stress or don't have had long-term stress um, at some point in their life, if not still consistent stress that doesn't abate. And this elevates our stress hormone cortisol, which keeps our mind racing. And it hinders us being able to get into deep sleep because your body thinks it's running away from a lion or a tiger. It stays in this flight or fight state. So really learning to have some resilience to your stress. I think that it's quite a difficult thing to tell people, just like, let's get rid of your stress. Maybe you have a child you worry about. Um, maybe you have a sick family member. Maybe you have a job that's very stressful and there's deadlines and you can't get rid of your job or your family member. So learning to increase your resilience to stress, learning some tools to manage your stress is going to help you bring down that elevated cortisol, especially at night so that your body can get out of that fight or flight state and really allow itself to get into that parasympathetic part of your nervous system where the deep restoration, healing, and repair comes into play. Now, blood sugar crashes are kind of interesting here too, because sometimes when the blood sugar dips in the middle of the night, people will say they wake up between 2 and 3 or 4 a.m. And it's usually because the stress hormones are released to raise your sugar. So those late night blood sugar dips may also be causing you to wake up in the middle of the night. A poor gut health will disrupt sleep. Serotonin, 80 to 90% of it is made in the gut. Serotonin, what a lot of people don't know is serotonin turns into melatonin, um, and that's what we need to help us fall to sleep. So when you find that you are taking a lot of melatonin and it's not working for you, it could be another issue. But if it works for you, you really have to look at your gut health and see, is your gut inflamed? Is there intestinal permeability? And is that creating less serotonin being made, which will impact your baseline levels of melatonin? Chronic inflammation in the body will hinder our deep sleep. Um, and then poor sleep will elevate our inflammation. So it's like a really big cycle. But if you have low grade chronic inflammation, even if it's from biotoxins, like you have some mold exposure, and when you go to sleep, that inflammation builds and the immune system reacts to it because it feels like it's being attacked, you will also wake up in the middle of the night. Um, I just wanted to mention the glymphatic system. That is the garbage men that specifically come into the brain, and it's needed for deep sleep, for brain health. And the glymphatic system, what happens at night is the brain actually shrinks a little bit. The gyri and the sulci shrink a little bit to allow for cleaning between all of those little nooks and crannies, where we clean out, bacteria we've killed, cells that have died, maybe some toxins we've inhaled or toxins we've produced. And so it's so important in that deep sleep cycle. Sometime between 10 p.m. and 2 a.m. is when this glymphatic system really is on high gear. And that's where you want to do most of your cleaning, so that you can get this deep sleep and you can clean your brain out so that it is less inflamed and you function better. One of the tips that I like to share is optimizing your evening meal. So, heavy meals right before you go to bed, really disruptive for your lymphatic system, really disruptive for sleeping because your body's in the business of still digesting. So, what we say for most people, and it's not always the case. So, for most people, we try and end the last meal 3 hours before bedtime. Now, I have teenage kids that do sports. And when they get home, they're hungry. So we try and eat something, maybe with some protein and fat. We try not to make it too big, but we want to eat that. Otherwise, they're too hungry when they go to bed. So it really is very personal. But eating just before you go to bed doesn't allow for proper digestion and allows for, kind of a spike in your blood sugar before you go to sleep. So if you eat your last meal 3 hours before you go to bed, you will have enough time to digest most of it, and that will prevent blood sugar from being fluctuating. It will actually keep it at a nice steady level. Also, making sure that you're having protein and fats in your evening meals instead of just carbohydrates or just some fruit because you have a fruit smoothie because it's hot or you feel tired and you don't want to make it. You need to have some protein and fat in there. So, because we need that for a stable energy overnight, protein and fat burns much slower. It's a much slower burning fuel, so you'll have it through the evening. If you have your carbohydrates, excuse me, my eye's itchy, it will um, you will metabolize it quicker and then you'll have a blood sugar drop. So protein and healthy fats. If you eat your meal really early and you need a snack, like I was saying, that my teenage kids often when they come home from their practices late, we might have some olives, we might have some coconut yogurt, and a little bit of protein, maybe a little piece of protein from dinner. But those things will help them allow them to get into deep sleep because it wasn't a big meal. And maybe we have an hour and a half or two before we go to bed. But it allows them to have this fuel to burn through the evening. And it prevents those blood sugar dips that can wake you up in the middle of the night. Stress and cortisol, the sleep killers. I mean, this is probably why in the last 2 decades, I've seen more and more people with disrupted sleep, lots on their minds, lots of stress. I see lots of new parents. So obviously, children are waking you up, and then when they're not waking you up and you get into teenagehood, you're worrying about them, and that's waking you up. Maybe you're worrying about your job, loved one. So um, the stress will keep coming. And so we really need to figure out how to bring our stress level down in the evening so that cortisol, which is our stress hormone, isn't like up high when we're going to bed, so we can get that restful, deep sleep. The same happens with children. If we get them excited, or if we have arguments with them before they go to bed, or we have arguments before we go to bed, it really elevates our stress hormone as well. And that also, impacts our sleep. Um, So I just kind of plotted it out here. Chronic stress, like work pressure, relationship issues, even like living with someone that you don't really like, or that you're angry with. This can all elevate cortisol way past the time we want to see it drop. Cortisol actually naturally raises in the morning. And then as the day goes on, it dips, 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 and it should be kind of almost at its lowest. And usually, when we do cortisol testing with patients, we might see with people who have small children or very stressful evenings because we've got to take care of someone, um, their cortisol will pop up as they're going to bed. And so that's normal. Your body's trying to help you get some energy to get past the dinners and the bedtimes and everything. But it's difficult to get into that deep sleep when you're up there. So, really having some sort of tools to bring yourself down an hour before you go to bed so that you're in that more relaxed state. A racing mind, when you're thinking about lots of things, that can also um, click your cortisol to be very high, and then you end up having racing thoughts and you can't go to sleep. What I love for there, and here's my practical tip here for racing mind is if you have a lot of things that you don't want to forget, keep a journal by your bed or like on some sort of recording device, write down those thoughts so you've kind of done a brain, I call it a brain dump. It happens to me once in a while, so I just do a brain dump, I write it all down, and then I know in the morning I've got it there and I won't forget anything. And then light sleep with frequent awakenings. This is like the typical parent or someone who has some sort of shift work. You're really missing that crucial deep and REM sleep. So Dr. Angie Huberman, who I absolutely love, if you want any information on sleeping outside of this, Dr. Huberman has a wonderful sleep guides, lots of practical tips from like very, very simple to very complex. But he practices something called non-sleep deep rest, called Yoga Nidra. It's an incredible tool, and you can look it up online, NSDR or Yoga Nidra. You can look up online, Yoga Nidra, Nidra, and it's like a 7, 8 minute um, relaxation meditation that is not only very effective at lowering cortisol, but it actually gives you like a nice deep sleep. So I often tell people who are trying to go to sleep and are just having a hard time, Try and practice this for a couple of weeks every night. It's 7 or 8 minutes. You put it on your device somewhere not close to your head where you can still hear it. And it really does help put you into that parasympathetic place, that non-stress, the opposite of the sympathetic, which is our cortisol, stress, fight or flight phase of our nervous system, tries to drop you into that parasympathetic, and you can get into that deep sleep much easier. And then I also have this 4-7-8 breathing method, which has been studied quite a bit. Also very, very simple for those of you who don't want to have a device next to your head. Um, I love the Yoga Nidra, but sometimes I don't want to fiddle with something. So you inhale through your nose for 4 counts. You hold your breath for 7 counts. And you exhale completely with a for 8 counts. And I find the 8 counts is very hard. So like don't blow it all out quickly. But even doing that for a minute or two, maybe before you want to start your nighttime routine, will get your head out of that racing, stressful place. Um, it will activate that parasympathetic nervous system and really help lower it. Um, they repeat it for 3 or 4 more times. I usually do it for a couple of minutes. And I find that if I'm really focusing on the breath, I can't really focus on the timing. So I might put a timer on. But I notice after 4 or 5 breaths that I am much more relaxed. And the other thing you can pair here, which I didn't put here, is like picture an image of, I don't know, someone you love, something fun you've done. My example that I can share with you that I do often is I picture whichever kid I had a good interaction with that day. I have 3 of them, and I just picture their smile as I'm breathing, or I picture myself snuggling them, which I do before they go to bed. And it really drops me right into that parasympathetic and drops my cortisol levels right away. So try any of those. So blood sugar and gut health also have a great connection to sleeping. And like we spoke about before, but it's so important to reiterate that not only is the timing of the meal important, but if you eat a really sugary dinner, what will happen is you'll have a blood sugar, like let's just say you had like just a bowl of pasta with tomato sauce and there was no fat anywhere. And then you had like some sort of sugary dessert, you like your ice cream or whatever. Maybe you have some dried fruit afterwards because you're craving something while you're watching TV, or even some chips, which are just high carbohydrates. What ends up happening is have that big sugar spike. And then as you have that blood sugar crash, your body wakes you up because there was no fat or protein. And just coming down from that high will lead to that crash. And what happens is not only does that disrupted sleep lead to morning fatigue, but it increases sugar cravings and cravings for things like coffee and tea and donuts, just to give you a kick to get you up. So if you're riding this roller coaster where you're not sleeping at night and you're craving sugar in the morning, really just try and think about what you can do at dinner time so that you can get into a better sleep cycle and so that your blood sugar stays stable. Again, we talked about the gut producing 90% of serotonin, which turns into melatonin, which is what helps us fall asleep. And the crazy thing is that as our sleep is disrupted, it also alters the composition of our gut microbiome. So the actual proportion of good and bad bacteria changes with the amount of sleep we have, and the less sleep we have, and the worse our circadian rhythm, our sleep wake cycle is, the more disrupted our sleep cycle is, the more we get an overgrowth of the bad bacteria and less of the good bacteria. And then that creates this bidirectional link where now we sleep less because our gut is less healthy, making less serotonin, which will turn into melatonin. So gut microbiome. So if you happen to have an irritable bowel, you probably experience some sort of sleep dysfunction, or you're not well rested in the morning because you don't have those microbes that will help produce those neurotransmitters that you need for a good deep sleep. So what does the research say about sleep duration and diabetes risk and blood sugar elevations and diabetes risk? And this is something a lot of people don't know. So when you get under 7 hours of sleep, you increase your risk of type 2 diabetes. So that is the not the autoimmune one. And if you have too much sleep, over 9 hours of sleep, you also increase your type 2 diabetes. So there seems to be this narrow window between 7 and 9 hours of sleep. Now it's different for children and teens. They need a little bit more sleep than we do. But this study from Yang et al. Done in 2023 on the impacts of metabolism and sleep shows that there is a direct link between diabetes risk and the amount of sleep that you're getting, too much or too little. They've also shown in some studies that night shift workers also have an increased risk of type 2 diabetes. Um, so, just these are things to look at outside of, taking your melatonin or taking a sleeping pill or anything like that. And if we go back to optimizing your evening meal, we already talked about this. Make dinner your lightest meal, but make sure there's some protein and fiber and healthy fats so you don't get this blood sugar spike, and don't eat the sugary things in the evening. If you really want to start impacting your sleep on a long-term basis and look for actual resolution of symptoms as opposed to just quick fixes. So here are some other science-backed sleep strategies that I love to use. I love to implement. Take your pencil and your paper or write it down. These are very, very effective. They seem super simple, um, and they don't cost you anything. So morning sunlight. So I always say a good night's sleep starts first thing in the morning. So first thing in the morning, and we do this even with children that are having sleep dysfunction. They go to bed late. They can't go to bed on time. It takes them a long time, and then they can't wake up in the morning. I will have a parent or the care provider turn on the lights, open the windows, expose that brain to natural light within an hour of waking, to not only boost the melatonin production, but to also send a signal to the back through the optic nerve through to the brain saying, hey, it's time to wake up, to start to produce dopamine to help us wake up. So exposing yourself to 10 or 30 minutes of natural light, glasses, no glasses, looking at the light as long as it's not uncomfortable. Um, it's really one of the best and simplest ways to do it. So if you are one of those people who has a hard time going to sleep, your circadian rhythm is not good, pick the time you want to wake up and make sure you turn on the lights, make sure you go to the window, make sure you expose yourself. Don't make it a slow start with everything dim and quiet, because that is not going to help you start to anchor that time as the start of your awake and sleep cycles. Then the other thing is we want to dim our evening lights 2 to 3 hours before bed. So we all have heard, and for those of you who are following me, I'm sure you're following lots of people who are giving you great health tips. Blue light suppresses our melatonin production. So blue light from computers, from our phones. We can use blue light blocking glasses. We can put there's some apps that we can use to decrease the blue light. But the other thing is that, our body historically, ancestrally, as the sun went down, um, our brain knew, okay, it's starting to get to be darker, and it would start that melatonin production. And so when we have lights on above head at 8, 9, 10 p.m. at night, our body still thinks the sun is up. So it doesn't think that it's time to go to bed. So those night lights, the dim lights that are down, kind of mimic ancestral fires and the sun going down. And that starts to signal our natural rhythms in our bodies to tell us, okay, yet the sun is going down. It's time for restoration. It's time for sleep. It's time for quiet. So really dimming the lights before bed or putting on night lights, lights that are down on the tables and making them a little dimmer, making sure they're more a yellow haze. You can even get red bulbs. That really helps as opposed to the blue lights. That will be another helpful thing. Time of caffeine for some people. So for some people, caffeine, like myself, I can drink and go right to sleep, have no problem, sleep deep, and feel great. But for many people with sleep disturbances, we want to avoid caffeine within 8 hours of bedtime. That includes coffees and teas and chocolates and things like that. It can delay sleepiness significantly, especially if you're a slow metabolizer of caffeine and it stays with you for a long time. So that is another piece. If you want to get to bed by 10 o'clock, you might not want to have a coffee at 3 p.m. You might want to have one if you want a second one at 1 p.m. or 12 p.m. We want to optimize our bedroom. Now, these are really easy things to do. Make sure your room is cooler so that you have that blanket and it's a little bit cooler. That helps us drop into deep sleep easier. Make sure it's dark and quiet. These are really, really easy things that you can do. And then again, we want to finish eating 3 hours before bed to help us with digestion and blood sugar spikes. Now, if you're already doing this and you're waking up and you're doing all these other things, it may be that you didn't have enough at your dinner to sustain you through the night. And as your blood sugar drops because you didn't have enough protein and fat, your body wakes up because it's stressed out. It thinks it's going to starve. So make sure again that you're putting the proportion of protein and fat and fiber into that dinner, even if it's not a heavy dinner, to make sure that you stay asleep. And then there are some supplements that are extremely helpful for some people, um, even when they've optimized all this. So I love to suggest magnesium glycinate. I put 400 milligrams here. That tends to be a decent dose. You will know if you are taking too much magnesium glycinate, if your stool is too soft. So I generally dose it to bowel tolerance. So you start with one pill. If you don't see any change, start with two pills. And these are just general guidelines. Everyone should speak to their healthcare practitioner before so they know. But these are general guidelines. You know, the bottle that you take, you can look at, make sure it's not interacting with any medications you're taking. But this is a typical dose. L-theanine, which we find in green tea, is very calming. 200 milligrams of that can be very helpful. And these are adult doses. Glycine, which is an amino acid that helps with detoxification, can also help support natural sleep. I actually love to use glycine as a sugar replacement. It has some sweetness to it. And so when people are trying to get off of sugar in their tea in the evening or in the morning in their coffee, they can put a little bit of glycine and it's very sweet. And that's kind of one of the ways that I weave that in as well. Again, Dr. Huberman will support what I say here about morning sunlight, setting your circadian clock for the whole day, improving the quality of sleep and your daytime alertness. So, if that's one thing you've never heard of, try that first. Okay. So surface versus root solutions. So traditional hygiene focuses on dark rooms and the bedtimes. Again, we didn't talk about bedtimes. Most helpful, I think, in terms of restorative sleep, getting into deep sleep, is getting sleep between 10, getting to sleep about 10:30 p.m. if that's possible for you, because our detoxification systems are at their heightened workload between 10 p.m. and 2 a.m. We want to make sure that we get into sleep and we give our body the most possible time to detoxify so that it can heal and repair and be free of those toxins. If you are doing all these surface habits, the dark rooms, the good bedtimes, maybe even going for a walk, a light walk in the evening to unwind and put yourself into that parasympathetic mode, you might then start looking at your hormones and your gut health and blood sugar and any lingering inflammation. Again, I've had quite a few patients in the last year where they have optimized most of their sleep, but they're still waking up in the middle of the night. And that is because our cortisol drops naturally at that time of the evening. Is at its lowest almost at 2, 3 in the morning. And if you're being exposed to some biotoxins, so that's pesticides, chemicals, mold toxins, we call mycotoxins, your body may feel like it's being attacked and it may wake you up. And this I found, multiple times in our functional medicine testing, which is why sometimes you really need to kind of go a little deeper than, the lifestyle and diet habits, which are very, very useful for 80% of people. So focusing on the external environment and your habits will help. And if that's not helping enough, then you really need to look at that functional medicine approach. Doing testing with your urine to see, hey, are you being exposed to something inflammatory that's inflaming your body that's keeping you from getting a deep sleep? Do you have some sort of gut dysbiosis, imbalance of good and bad bacteria, parasites, viruses? This is what we love about functional medicine that really uncovers the deep drivers of inflammation and dysregulation in our body. And when we get rid of those things, we find people really sleep much better. Dr. Matthew Walker again, these guys, have done so much research on sleep, and he really, really feels, as do I, we have to stop treating sleep as optional. Like, yeah, I just don't get good sleep. I'm like, you're never going to get better. It's like saying, well, I just don't like to eat healthy. Well, then you're never going to feel healthy. You're going to have some chronic health condition down the road. You're not going to feel clear in your brain. You're not going to be as vital as you can be. So it is like there's no biological system that isn't enhanced by good sleep or damaged by poor sleep. You can be taking all the supplements, doing everything you can, organic food and juicing and joy in your life. But if you're not sleeping, you will not heal because your body, 100%, it's not an option, needs it. Sleep restoration action plan. So if we just go over this again, I know I'm beating a dead horse here, but I love to these are my practical tips. They're very easy to start with. Start your day with that sunlight within the first 60 minutes of waking up to just anchor that awake part of your awake sleep cycle, your circadian rhythm. Create some sort of wind down ritual. I know for many people, they're very busy. They make their dinner, they got to pack lunches or do some sort of laundry, maybe do some work. Give yourself some time to wind down, to dim the lights, to put your screens away, maybe play some calming music, maybe do a yoga nidra and engage in some really calm activities. Have a bath, read a book, all the old traditional things that I think we've gotten away from can be extremely helpful. Like I said, do that sleep diary, or you can wear a thing like a wearable, like an Oura ring. I actually don't have mine on. Oura ring can tell you, like maybe you're getting 8 or 9 hours of sleep, but you're still feeling crappy. And it will actually share with you, or a whoop strap, share with you, are you getting into deep sleep? How much deep sleep are you getting? How much REM sleep are you getting? And that will change how you feel in the morning. And so that's really interesting way to track your progress even better. And then in the end, one of the steps near the end is like consider functional medicine testing for your hormone, your gut, inflammatory imbalances, things you're being exposed to. We always uncover a lot more than we think is going on. Um, and that would be, your last step. These are the first things are really important to try. And remember, sleep is your built-in repair system. That is where we heal and restore. We boost our immune system function. Every aspect of our body and our health is restored with sleep. So if you can pick one of these things tomorrow morning, make sure you get up and look at the light. If you already do that, create a wind down ritual. If you already do that, think about monitoring how you feel when you go to bed at certain times and how well you feel in the morning, how much energy and how much brain clarity you have. If you've done all these things and you've been thinking about functional medicine testing, maybe this is the time to do that. I'm always amazed at how much we can elevate someone's health when we look at those underlying causes of inflammation. And usually there's things that we don't even know are there. Oh, and my slide that says, there we go. Sweet dreams begin tonight. Again, same thing. Morning foundation, track your progress, even ritual. And if all else fails, or you've done all those things and you're not quite there, address the root causes. And that's it. Um, I hope that was informative for you. I really enjoy speaking about sleep. I think it's such an important topic. Let me just see if I can stop sharing. There we go. I just wanted to see if there are any questions. Maybe put them in the chat if you can. Maybe you've heard some of this stuff, maybe you haven't. Oh, great to see all of you there. Some that I know, some that I don't know. So those of you that I know, I'm going to ask you this week if you tried any of these sleep tactics. Um, and you're going to share them with me, and then maybe I'll share them on Instagram and see what worked, what didn't work. Hopefully that helpful. I wish you wonderful restorative sleep. Pick one step at a time. And remember, good habits take time. You stack one on top of the other, and you consistently try and do them. And it's consistency, it's not perfection. And you just keep going, and your sleep will get better. Okay, thank you so much for joining me. I look forward to seeing you guys next month on the next Biohacking Supermom session. Bye bye.